Hello there. This podcast is brought to you by Fidesis, a digital product design and development company. But today we have Mr. Puneet Chawla, who is the founder of Design Wings and also a YouTuber. And all he wishes is to make design education accessible. So let's get started. Hello, Puneet. It's great to have you here on Fidi Show. Hope you are doing great.
Yes, absolutely. I'm doing very well. Thank you for having me here.
It's an honor to have you here on the show. So, tell a bit about your journey as a designer and what made you realize that you wanted to be a UX designer, whereas, people from IT branch, they generally go for SD roles.
Yeah, so when I started off, I started off being a web developer. That was something that by chance somebody asked me to make a website. I did not know how to make a website, but ever since I was a kid, I never said no to anything. I just wanted to try something new, so I started making a website, and I quickly got fascinated by front end visual design, which was called web design back then. Now it's just spread out into so many hemispheres. But when I started off, there was just web design. That's it, web design or web development. And when I got into it, I realized I was not built for coding. And because I sucked at maths, I sucked at logical thinking, what computer engineers should be good at. So I realized, this is not what I'm cut out for. And at that point of time, I was very lucky to have one or two people around me who were in this field of software development, design, things like that. They told me that UX and UI is going to be the next big thing. And back then, UX and UI was a thing, but the boom in the Indian market hadn't, arrived. So very, very lucky to have those people around me who told me to get into it. And till date, I feel, I've never been able to mold myself into a UX UI designer. I still feel I'm not a UX UI designer. People, I've worked for companies like Magic Bricks, PayU, Fab Hotels, Chalo Pado, Vizara. I've worked at companies which were backed by IIT. There's so many great opportunities that I got, which made me realize that UX and UI design, in its cliche, generic form, is not what I wanted to do. So hence I, shifted from the whole let me get a job perspective to let me build a business perspective. And having a design background and opening a business worked out really well, because I could design the services I wanted to put out into the world. I understood product management and product design, and everything I think stacks up to what I'm being able to do today, be it with YouTube, be it with Design Wings, which is my design school, be it with my future enterprises, which I can't say anything about right now, but it's coming soon.
Excited. We are excited for that. Yeah. So, how did the idea for Design Wing came into your mind, and what gave you the courage to leave a stable job and do a startup?
So I still feel I don't have a startup yet, because the whole principle of a startup is that it's backed, it's backed by some sort of funding. My business is more bootstrapped, in the sense that I put my own money into it. I took the whole risk. There's nobody backing the business. There's nobody mentoring the business. So Design Wings came from a very odd place in my life. I was working at Magic Bricks, and that Magic Bricks was one of the best environments I've worked at. Unfortunately, I can't say that about every job I worked with. So there, everybody was very supportive, very nice. They understood the talent that I had. They understood the interest that I had. And they wanted to utilize my talent, whatever it might be, to build their products, rather than telling me to or forcing me to get, to mold into their sort of system. So that was very interesting. But towards the end of when I was about to leave, for a week or two, I took an off because I realized I was moving towards a very depressive state of, um, that I'm not my own boss, which since I began design, I always used to hustle. I remember when I was in college, I had three design roles in three different companies. And I used to, rush from college classes to these companies, which were in the other parts of the city. And it was like, I loved that hustle lifestyle of not knowing whether something's stable or not, or being my own boss. So in the last weeks of those depressive days of not knowing where I want to be, what I'm doing with my life, the generic things that any college student or any fresher or even an experienced person gets from time to time. I just needed a signal. I just needed a push, and the push that I got was from understanding that I've always taken risks and they've always paid off in some capacity. So what I did was I took the leap. My family was extremely supportive. My friends were extremely supportive. Everybody around me had the same vision I had. So I never had a problem starting the design school. And even today, I do struggle running the design school because my vision wasn't to make money. My vision wasn't to scale a business. My vision wasn't to, get into a fancy entrepreneurs club of, high flying citizens who are millionaires, So I wanted to take the path less taken. And even though it is difficult, it does pay off in a lot of other ways rather than just money. So now where I've come at, it's so much fun, trying new ideas. Being my own boss means I can take a bit break from my design school and try a new initiative. And that's just there's a lot of thrill, involved in it. And it's just a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah, that's great to hear. Like you said right now, right? Startup means you needed to be backed up by someone. So that means you want to go for funding. Okay. So, but there are startups that are working pretty well. Those are bootstrap. Okay. So they also call themselves startup only. So what you say, like you don't.
The issue I have with startups, the startup culture is the way people put it at. Like if I'm a startup, first of all, there's a huge stereotype that 99% startups fail. Um, if when I remember when I was a kid, there was no such thing as startups. I'm sure even when you were a kid, there was no such thing as startups. Startups is like it's been like 10, 15 years. The whole startup culture has, kind of evolved and come into play in the mainstream. Before that, everybody had a business.
Yeah.
Everybody started a business from point zero without anybody backing them, without any team, without any co-founders, so as to say.
Yeah.
Today you don't have to find or build a product. You have to first find a good co-founder.
Yeah.
Like, why should I have a co-founder? I can be an individual owner of a business, still scale it up to a level where I have no other co-founders. Ratan Tata doesn't go out of the limb and say, oh, these are my 10 co-founders. No, he says, I am Ratan Tata. My company is named after me or my family. And, it's what it is. When we look at the industrialists of this country, I want to be an industrialist. I want to be a businessman, and I don't want to be a startup founder, is what I'm trying to say. I don't want to be clubbed with other startup owners. Not saying that, not trying to demean them, just saying that is not the path I want to take.
Yeah. So also another question comes to my mind that you said you want to go for funding. So also you say that you don't like to be bossed by someone. As you said, you got frustrated when you were thinking that, like, you felt that you are not the boss of your own work. So don't you think like going for funding will just put like take a part of your company, and it will give to someone, and you have to listen to them. So it's like it won't be your own, like properly your own.
Yeah, that is why I said I've bootstrapped my own company. I've spent my own money I've put my own money into Design Wings. I've put my own money onto YouTube. I put my own money everywhere. you know um what you said is completely correct. When look at some startups which are put in a bad light because they've been funded by somebody who expects a lot from them. Let's look at a classic case like what's that company called? Snapdeal. Let's look at Snapdeal. At one time, Snapdeal was bigger than Flipkart. There was no Amazon at that time, so they had a good percentage of the e-commerce market. But they were backed up by certain people who weren't interested in their business model, who weren't interested completely in creating an e-commerce environment. For them, there was a lot of financial stress for the founders because they had a lot of financial obligation. Hence, there was a lot of derailing of Snapdeal in a lot of areas, and hence that is why it fell off for quite some time. We never, for a while, we never heard of Snapdeal. Like in between, there was no Snapdeal in our ears. It was only Flipkart or Amazon. Now they're slowly making a comeback. Another great example of that in the same field I am in is are companies like Byju's and White Hat Junior. They're massively backed by foreign investors, and even a lot of local investors. Byju's, I remember when it started off, it had a very clear vision. I remember watching this episode of Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma, which I confess, I do watch Tarak Mehta Ka Ulta Chashma. There was one episode dedicated just to Byju's education, where they said that they don't want to replace tutors. They just want to facilitate education, just to improve the way kids learn. That's it. They don't want to replace tutors. Less than 6 months back, Byju's introduced a new product called Byju's Classes, which clearly says, we are your online tutors. They went on from, hey, we don't want to take the place of tutors, to, hey, we want to replace tutors in a span of a few years, because there was a lot of pressure from investors to keep on growing at the same rate they are. And I feel that also changes your mindset over time. Having like someone who is a godfather or an investor or a backer can affect the way you think about doing business also. So that's very correct what you said.
How important do you think having a design degree is to shine in the industry?
This is the most commonly asked questions, but this can be put, every time somebody asks me, I tell them a different answer because my perspective about it changes ever so often. I feel a design degree is as important as getting into IIT. For some people, it's a goal, it's an achievement, it's a big deal. But for some people, maybe they want to choose another path. Everybody who wants to become an engineer doesn't go to an IIT, even though that's how the society has molded everything into. Same with design degrees. It's a mold. A design degree is basically a mold, and you're trying to get into that mold. And to be honest, I know a lot of people with proper design degrees from some very well-known design institutes or colleges in India. And they've gotten into some very incredible teams, companies, and they've done very well for themselves. They're doing well for themselves. So, and at the same time, I know a lot of self-taught designers who have no, like, they don't even have a certificate in design, and they're still like head of design at this company, design lead at this company, or owner of this design studio, you know. And whenever I speak to them, I feel they have this a different mentality altogether. So if you're going for, if you want a safe path, you want to go to college, you want to get into a good company, you want to scale just like everyone else, good to go to a design college, get a degree. But if you are the kind of person who loves the hustle, who wants to, maybe, you know, there are a lot of, like I do at Design Wings, or what Harsha does at Design Boat, or whoever does at Designers. You can get a quick certificate these days and still start your career. But that requires a lot of risk, hustle, and a self-learning or a self-taught mentality. That helps you in the long run. So both a design degree and doing it on your own or through certificates has their own, plus points and negative points. So I feel whichever path you want to take, go for it. If you're a student getting into a college for the first time, you're a bachelor, like you want to get into a bachelor's degree, not a bachelor. You should get into design if you want to do design in the long term. Unlike, me, who just got into Amity, did a very basic bachelor's degree just because I wanted to get through. That was my mindset, because I wanted to hustle. I wanted to take up three different jobs as a designer in 3 different companies. I wanted to build a business. I wanted to build a studio. So that gave me a lot of time and focus on that. Otherwise, if I went to a design college, I would be just focused on the design. So I think both of them had their own own paths that you set for yourself.
So how Design Wing is different from traditional design schools, like how the courses and everything varies?
It's cheaper. I'm just kidding. Yeah, it is definitely, it's the most affordable right now. There are a lot of them which are trying to compete. But the problem is, if you got a budget of 30 lakh rupees in your life, if somebody gave you 30 lakh rupees, and if somebody said that I can get you a deal on a Mercedes, you can own a first-hand, original, paperwork, everything Mercedes, or I'll get you a Maruti Suzuki 800. Which one would you pick? You would definitely go for a Mercedes. I'm sure that's your answer. I won't. I'll be shocked if you answered differently. But the thing is, we are bringing designers from the topmost companies. We have mentors from Jio. We have mentors from Uber. We have mentors from HFI. We have mentors who we are going to, get more mentors as the team expands. And each of them have achieved the goals people want to achieve. And that is the issue I had with design schools before I started my own, was all of them have a script. And this is something, I'm not going to take names because somebody is going to sue me tomorrow. I've gotten mentors from different design schools approaching me and saying, we want to join your design school. And I said, okay, cool. We'll take a little test of yours, to see whether you can teach and mentor. And they said, okay, we'll do that. And when they came to us, we had everything ready for them. They asked for a script. And I said, what script are you talking about? And they said, we got a script when we were working for Flana company. And I said, that's crazy because that's a very big design school. That's a very well known, a lot of students go to that design school. Is this something very common? And they said, yes, this is every mentor that works with us uses a script. And that is the moment that broke me, that I understood education doesn't shift. It's still a business, be it for design, be it for engineering, be it for anywhere. And I realized if I treat it as a business, all I'll be doing is hurting the future of so many bright individuals and talented folks. And every single design school, I can name people, I can name design schools, I can name leaders at these design schools. I can show, if I show you their designs, you will give me a design which looks better than that or works better than that. Because these mentors themselves aren't at the best positions in their life, you know. And if a teacher who is depressed with their own lives, who isn't where they want to be in their lives, are working for you just for the sake of it, that's not mentorship, that's not teaching, that's not adding value to the students. And if somebody challenges this, that this is just hypothetical and you're just you're being ignorant, this is not what happens with design schools, I have a list of names that I can show, and you can double check their skill versus what they teach, and it'll prove it to you. So this is a huge scandal, Deekshita. Get this right, is everybody should get this right, is this is a huge scandal, and design schools in general are a scandal. That is why I brought Design Wings to fix it, to bring some resurrections. I am the Khan Academy of design. If Khan Academy revolutionized affordable education, I am revolutionizing this affordable design education, and that's the fact.
That's a fact. That's well said, and I absolutely agree that whenever we go to college, we don't see our teachers like a very happy teaching. So they will just have a tendency to finish the portion and just complete it out. So why this happens? Like, I have seen this, and I genuinely feel because they are not well paid, one thing maybe, and teachers, like those who come for teaching, they are like generally they don't have anything, like they do the education thing and then they think the teaching is the safest option and they go for it, and they don't have really a passion for it, so which really harms the future of the students, and it really harms it. Like even in normal colleges and schools we can see that, right? So I genuinely agree with that.
I feel there's a lack of motivation. A lot of people, I'm sure, get into teaching with a lot of passion, and this is the same thing with anything. I went into a full-time job thinking this is my passion, I want to do it full-time. Okay, so what if somebody else is my boss? Okay, this is my passion, I'll do it. But the lack of motivation, the politics, the being pushed down every time, the lack of good pay, the lack of good leadership, there's a lot of pressure on people starting something, especially when they're starting off something new. If you're a new teacher, if you're a brand new teacher, your passion is to teach. A lot of people go into teaching with the passion to teach, which they think they're good at it and they want to get into it. But that passion isn't nurtured forward. Here's a script, here's a book, here's the syllabus, you need to cover this, otherwise we'll fire you, we'll do this, we'll do that. So all that's not motivation. People think, oh, negative motivation is a thing. There's no such thing as negative motivation. Motivation is motivation, and if there's none, then you lose your passion eventually. So yeah,
I agree. So like what are the day-to-day practices that you follow to improve your design skills?
So that's a very interesting question, because there are a lot of things which aren't even linked to design that one needs to do to improve design. Number one, Uh, I feel number one being get your basics straight. You know, a lot of people think, this is what is design thinking. There are these 5 steps. You need to cover these 5 steps, otherwise your designs won't come out good. You know, that's what is generally taught. But design thinking is more than just you learning a process and replicating it again and again and again. Design is more about experimenting. Design is more about thinking out of the box. Design is more about finding a new solution to an old problem. Um, the thing is, if you didn't know how to make a roti, you can't just go ahead and make a pizza in the oven, can you? Right?
No.
People, when you go into the kitchen, what does your if you're interested in cooking, what does your mom teach you first? She teaches you how to cook a roti, a chapati. For any foreign viewers, chapati is a Indian bread, which is very basic. You don't start to make you can't make a car on the first day of joining an automobile company. They teach you the gears first. They teach you how to make an engine, how an engine works, how tires work, how gears work, how fuel consumption works. You need to learn so many aspects of so many things to make a car. Same thing comes with design. If your basics of a layout isn't there, you can't make a great website. For websites, layouts have been such a crucial part of making a front end design. So same thing comes with UX and UI. If you're starting out in UX and UI and you think following a certain path will get you there, no, it's not. You have to learn so many different things to even start walking on the same path. The first thing being, what I like to do on a daily basis is to practice a lot of graphic design, in the sense that all the posts all the posts you see on Design Wings page, all the thumbnails you see on my YouTube videos, all the editing, everything is done by me. Reason being, even if I'm not designing a UI every single day, I want to continuously work on my visual design skills, because I've been a UI designer and I know that. I don't go out and tell people, hey, I'm a great UX researcher. I don't know. I only know the ABCs of UX research because I had to do it, but I can't tell you how to revolutionize UX research or how to do it differently, because my basics, I'm not even very confident about the basics. So if you're not an expert at the basics, you can't make a great design. And that is why I keep telling people, don't try and become somebody else. Every day when I wake up, I tell myself, I have my own path. I'm going to move on my own path. I'm going to make my own choices. I'm going to do what I do best. And unfortunately, UX and UI is a field where everybody just continuously shows you a path that they've taken and they expect you to take the same path. That is why I always suggest people is create your own style. I'm sure there's going to be people from Unacademy, there are going to be people from Swiggy, Zomato commenting down below this video, shitting on me, because that's what they always do. Trust me, I've gotten in fights with a lot of designers from a lot of places because they believe if I am saying something different, I am wrong. And people need to understand this. So every day, whatever I'm doing, my tasks are laid out in such a way that I block myself out from the cliches of design. And it's not like I don't want to learn. If somebody tells me, hey, you're wrong at this, I take off any mask that I've put on. I take off my ego. I put my ego on the side and I say, okay, am I doing this wrong? I try to find a better solution for it. I try to get around it and see whether I could have done it any better. And if at the end of the day I realize I'm wrong, I'll admit I'm wrong. You know, but a lot of designers think, oh, this guy works with Google, he must be correct. You know, so that I get that a lot, and I feel more designers need to do things in their daily life which takes them away from the cliches of design. Let this video be an example that a guy who's not a cliche designer has made it somewhere, even when people, designers from Swiggy, designers from Zomato, designers from Unacademy, designers from other design schools hate me. But, you know, they need to admit that, you know, different things can work out sometimes, you know.
They do. They really do, because everyone has their own path, and copying someone won't help you anywhere. You won't see two famous personalities having the same journey. They never do
Never.
have the same journey. So
Yeah.
copying never helps. So absolutely, you're correct. So like, what are some of the points that one should keep in mind while they are building a portfolio? So that
Okay. I think the issue with portfolio is people take a portfolio um, as an art showcase. You know, you go to an art museum, you like what you see, you admire a piece of art, you sometimes even go deep inside a piece of art, and you get out of the museum. That's it. But the thing is, a portfolio needs to be more than an art museum. You know, it needs to be a pitch saying that, hey, this is me, this is my project, this is the solution I came up with, this was the problem that I tackled, this is my role, this is, you know, these are the tasks that I did, or the processes that I followed to reach to my destination. And I think the way you can make a portfolio which stands out from everyone else is take your portfolio as a pitch. You know, look at actual pitches of various companies. You know, look at how Airbnb pitched Airbnb to their investors. You know, they took a problem statement, they did research, so they, you know, they put out the research details, they showed the market, they brought their idea forward, showcased how they intend to tackle the problem, and there you go. You know, there it is. There's your recipe for a successful portfolio. The problem is we look at other portfolios to get inspiration. You know, like, I'm sure every designer watching this would have done that, is to look at other people's portfolios. It's a great idea to see how they might have gone about doing something, but I feel you need to make a mark at anybody who's looking at your portfolio. And if you don't have the essentials of leaving that mark, you basically don't have a good portfolio. So next time you're looking at making a good portfolio, look at successful pitches. You know, go to a website. I'll refer a website here. I've looked at it and it's really cool. It's called Slidebean. Slidebean is they help you make slides for a pitch deck, which is basically when you're a startup owner or a business owner, you want to pitch your ideas. That is how you pitch it. And they have a lot of good examples of Airbnb pitch deck, Uber pitch deck. You know, I think they have a Zomato pitch deck also. There are a lot of popular startups on there. So if one startup could have gotten $1 million in funding using that one pitch deck, I'm sure you can get one job with a decent portfolio. I mean, I don't even need to say it. So if you follow successful portfolios or successful pitches, I think you'll be able to make something of your own as well.
That's a great advice. So like I follow you on LinkedIn, and a few days ago you posted that you are living the dreams of your life. So how does it feel?
I think it teaches you a lot, and when I said I'm living the my life's dreams, like the dreams I had maybe 15, 20 years ago, not 20 years ago. 20 years ago, I would have been a kid. I didn't know what I was doing. Maybe like 7 to 10 years ago, I had put a benchmark for myself. Because at that time, I was trying to do YouTube. I was trying to make a mark I was doing photography back then. So I was trying to make a mark as a photographer, as someone who's an artist, as someone who has an entrepreneurial spirit. I wanted to leave a mark. And the thing is, people have forgotten how to celebrate their milestones. I'm saying that I'm living my dream, but there are a lot of dreams that haven't come true yet. But I still am grateful for the dreams that have come true. Unfortunately, everybody's in a rush. Everybody wants to get to their ultimate dream today, and that's the issue with people living their lifestyle. I find a better lifestyle is worth not having $1 billion today. If somebody gave me $1 billion and said, hey, you can have this or you can have a great lifestyle, I'd pick a great lifestyle. And the fact that I can do whatever I want to do, and it gets tens of thousands of views, thousands of likes, people truly appreciate and get a lot of help from it as well. It's all that I ever really wanted. Now, whatever will come next in life will just be a cherry on the top of the cake. I think I've already gotten the cake, and people like you, people who follow me, people who take my advice, consider taking my advice. I think that is an achievement in itself, and that has fulfilled a lot of my dreams. So kudos to people like you who make people like us happy, people our dreams come true. That's a huge blessing.
That's so kind of you to say. So, like one life advice that you will love to give to all the kids who are hustling hard and trying to make a name and to explore where their true passion lies.
One advice that I would like to give to everyone watching this video, probably, be it even if you're failing in life, if you're somebody who has taken the risk of doing anything, and the risk could be anything. The risk could literally be waking up early in the morning. Waking up early in the morning is such a huge risk. You can fall ill because it's chilly outside. You can trip over a wire because it's dark. You can probably die, I think, if you wake up early in the morning. I'm not sure if that's possible, but that's a huge risk, So learn to appreciate yourself for the small steps that you take. In fact, I'm actually, this is the first time I'm saying this publicly, but I'm actually writing a little book, which I would love for it to go mainstream someday. I'll tell you the name because, what's in a name. So the name of the book that I'm writing it's called You Only Need One. And it's based on the experiences I've had in life. And this is the first time in this book that I've shared the rough childhood that I had to go through, the problems that I had to face, being in a family where I knew I never had any support from a lot of people I wanted support from, and the little things that I learned along the way, and the way it now reflects on my life, the way that people look at me, when I still remember a lot of moms of my friends used to like me better than their own sons because I had learned so many things as a kid. I was always an obedient child. I was I tried to be as polite as possible, and I'm not. Again, a lot of people think I'm cocky because I showcase what I have learned, but no, it's basically I'm trying to inspire a person. Even if it inspires one person, I'm happy with it. So if I write this book, if some one person buys it, I'll be happy because maybe that one person's life would have changed or would have gone onto a different path. And that's all I think success really means is, why do we all do this? Why do we risk our money, our lifestyle, our ideologies to do something which is super risky? We do it because we want to inspire somebody else. We want to show the world that we can do it, so can you. So this book is all about that, and I think this will go very in depth um, into the little things in life. So my last words would, be that appreciate the little things in life, appreciate your little things in life. If you wake up early in the morning, that's an achievement. If you ate healthy today, that's an achievement. Don't push yourself too much, and you'll eventually get onto a path that you like, that you have fun on. Not onto a 9 to 5 where everybody wants to get onto. That's all I have to say.
That's great. I wish you all the very best for your book, and I am really excited for it because you have definitely inspired and you have filled me with positivity and motivation today. So thank you, sir, for coming to our show and giving your valuable insights on everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for reminding me again.